Hello everybody and welcome to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford in the Ilk Shed for a weekly album review. We also play local, unsigned and independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wycombe Sound, you should be able to find us. You can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain @wycombesound.org.uk. And I particularly want to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anybody with MP3s to share, a story to share, anybody involved in the creative arts, get in touch. We're also repeated on Wycombe Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wycombe Sound Listen Again. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So this week we are chatting to the Sepia Tone Folk Collective, and we're going to listen to some of their tunes in a little bit. But before we do that, we're going to head over to the Rhylight Zone. And this week we're doing the first chapter of Formerly, The Rise and Fall of a Social Network, which is one of my novels. We're going to serialise it in the coming weeks. So, Formerly, Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. 146,357 people die every day. That's 6,099 an hour, 102 a minute, or 5 every 3 seconds. Over 50 million people every year. How about that for a target audience? Looking back, I should have anticipated an unorthodox interview. I mean, how do you deal with a man who reduces human life and death to numbers and statistics? And once you learn to deal with him, how do you laugh, talk, eat, live, and work with him? Tech startups are notorious for their crazy founders, but John Myers took the biscuit. "Welcome to Formerly," my potential boss announced, gesturing to the chaotic room around him. "Sorry about the mess. We don't have many visitors." "I wonder why," I mumbled. The office looked more like a frat house. The place reeked of stale beer and sweat, and a pile of stinking clothes shuddered and then sat upright. It lifted a crusty hand in acknowledgement and said something vague about caffeine. "That's Kerry," said John. "He's our video guy. He's a useless but give him a camera and he's a machine. Morning, Kerry." "Morning, dude," he replied, shuffling out of his rags and into a semi-respectable pair of khaki shorts, flashing a glimpse of oversized thighs and off-white Y-fronts. He grabbed a starched Hawaiian shirt from the floor in front of the sofa, sniffed it to determine its freshness, and pulled it over his head. Then he hobbled over to meet us in the middle of the debris-strewn living room. He smelled even worse up close, somewhere between a cesspit and a brewery. "Don't ask, it's still rendering. I'm going to grab a shower." Yeah, John replied. He always says that. Sometimes I wonder what we pay him for. I watched Kerry retreat through a narrow doorway as John cleared a space for me on the sofa. I didn't really want to sit on it, but I didn't have much of a choice. It crunched as I sat down. Sofas aren't meant to do that. "So," John said, clapping his hands together, "let's get straight to business. After all, we're both men of business when all is said and done. Tell me what you know about our company." "Not much," I laughed, nervously. "I can see that," John said. "You're wearing a suit for a start. But you must have looked us up before you applied to join the team." "Well," I replied, "I know the basic mechanics. You sign up, you post updates which are hidden from view, and then when you die, your profile goes live to the public." "That's all you need to know. We plan to monetize death, Dan." As he spoke, a key turned in the latch and the front door opened, letting in the cold and the distant sound of traffic. "We're looking for a front-end developer, and you more than fit the bill in terms of qualifications and experience. But what about culture? Dedication? Think you can match us there?" "Hey, Flick." I turned to look at the newcomer, a pretty blonde woman who strolled into the room, pulled a MacBook Air from a tartan satchel and prepared to start work. She smiled sweetly at the two men who faced her. "Morning, John," she said. "Abby's here too. He's just parking the car." "Good lad. When he comes in, tell him to come and meet Dan. He's here about the developer job." "Hi, Dan," she said, as she logged into her machine. "I'm Felicity, but everyone calls me Flick." "Hi, Flick," I replied. "Nice to meet you. What's your role? You don't look like a typical programmer." "Thanks. That's probably because I'm not a programmer. I just do whatever needs doing. I'm in charge of PR and office management, but I spend half of my time cleaning this place up and half of my time looking after the boys. That doesn't leave room for much else." "How'd you fit it all in?" I asked. "I do a lot of unpaid overtime," she replied. "And you will too if you join us. Good luck with that." She smiled breezily and went back to her laptop. "It's true, you know," John said grimly. I won't pretend otherwise. This job will take over your life, and if it doesn't take over your life, we'll fire you and take on someone who's more dedicated. I've worked at startups before. Not at this one you haven't, John replied. Ah, and here's Abby. Morning, boss, he said, looming in the doorway with a cup of coffee in each hand. The staff at Starbucks had written Abby on one of the cups. He kept this for himself and placed the other one in front of Flick. They never spell my name right, he complained, turning to look at John. How are you today? Pretty good. This is Dan. He's applying for the developer role. You think you can work with him? You like music, Dan? Of course, I replied. Me too, Abby said. I can't stand working in silence. Sounds like we're going to be friends. Abby is our back-end developer, John explained. That's right, boss. Can I get you guys a drink? No thanks, John replied. I'm sure you got something to work on. Besides, I need a real drink. You coming, Dan? It's 11 a.m. and I'm being interviewed, I said. So sure, why not? That's the spirit. Time doesn't exist in this place. We work when we can and we drink when we can. Let's go. Flick and Abby stayed at the office while I followed John out the front door, across the road and along a narrow side street. 2 minutes later, we were walking through Camden Market, absorbing the dubious sounds and smells of the street dealers who sell grinders and poppers to teenage kids. We cut through the food stalls with their haunting aromas of fried noodles, strange curries and unpronounceable foreign cuisines, and then turned right along the high street. Further down the road, past the neon lights of the electric ballroom, we pushed through the crowd outside the station and moved on towards the World's End. Its imposing facade was partly covered by a huge advertisement for the latest iPad. John led the way inside and up to the empty bar. We were served by a tattooed behemoth of a woman who looked like she'd rolled into work after a night at the Ministry of Sound. What can I get you? She asked, without bothering to say hello. Her breath smelled faintly of cigarettes, and she reeked of cheap perfume. Somehow, it was comforting, like when you're walking down the street and a sudden smell sends you back in time. Pint of Stella for me, please, said John, pulling a wad of notes from his wallet. Dan, what's your poison? I'll have a Guinness, I replied. To tell the truth, I needed it. This wasn't what the job ad had led me to expect. Guinness, eh? Good man. Beckoning to the barmaid, he muttered something and handed over a couple of banknotes. She came back with a handful of loose change and a packet of dry roasted peanuts. We took our drinks and climbed a red spiral staircase onto a gantry that overlooked the empty interior. We sat down at a table and sipped at our drinks. So, said John, trying not to stare at me as I wiped foam from my lip. You've met the team, or most of them. Peter is away at the moment. He spends a lot of time in Palo Alto. You've seen the office, and not many people see that, believe me. You should have a pretty good idea of our culture, and I presume you know about our product. I've got a profile, I replied. Is that enough? It's a start. Do you have a girlfriend, Dan? A wife? A family? I've not got much of a family. My dad passed away when I was 17. Heart attack. Mom remarried. Her and my stepdad are retired now. I don't see them much. I'm sorry to hear that, Dan, but it might be for the best. We don't have much time for the living. We're a social network for the dead, after all. What about a partner? Sarah? I asked. She's a journalist at the Next Web. She works long hours herself, so she knows how it is. Does she now? Mused John, absent-mindedly. He sipped from his pint, smacked his lips, opened up the peanuts and continued. I wonder. This job will kill your social life, and many a startup has ruined a marriage or a long-term relationship. I'm warning you, Dan, because it's only fair. It takes a big commitment to join this company, and I need you to be aware of what you're getting yourself into before you take the job. What kind of salary are you expecting? 30,000 plus, I said, taken aback by the question. But I'm flexible, really. I'm freelancing at the moment, so any fixed wage is an advantage. I'm going to tell you straight, Dan, we can't afford that. If we could, we'd move out of this of an office. We can make a deal, though. We pay all of our employees in stock, at least partially. Peter and I live on our savings. We both sold earlier startups. He made more than I did, but I'm not jealous. I have enough to pay the bills. Everything else is just a number on a balance sheet. The rest of the team is paid partly in stock and partly with a salary. It might have some tax benefits as well, but you'll have to talk to Peter about that. You're probably looking at £25,000 plus £5,000 of stock per annum, starting after you pass your probation. That could work, I said cautiously. Does that mean that the job's mine if I want it? Perhaps. I'm going to call you in 24 hours. You'll know it's me. Until then, I want you to seriously consider your options. You know how much we're offering, you know our product, you know whether you want to revolutionize the way we look at our digital afterlives. If you decide you want the job, then we'll discuss it. But I'm warning you, once you join us, there's no turning back. What is this? I asked. Yahoo? Not quite. John picked up his remaining half pint and downed it in one, all at 11:30 on a Monday morning. Listen, Dan, I've got to go. I'm the only one on the front end at the moment, and we're having teething problems with our new beta. In all seriousness, I hope you'll join us. When you lift up the bonnet, it's a mess. I'm more of a businessman than a programmer, and we need someone who can tidy the code up. This is also your chance to make a difference, to have an impact on a service that's going to change the world. Are you going to spend the rest of your life writing copy for clients, or do you want to come with us while we disrupt 7 shades of Silicon Valley? For the next 20 minutes, John took me through what my role would be and what I'd be doing on a day-to-day basis. He talked about financials and investments and how Formerly had enough venture capital to keep on growing. He talked about variables and Photoshop and how I'd be working with Kerry to bring his ideas to life. He talked about users and how they're the lifeblood of the site and how he and Peter plan to make money from them and share it out across the rest of the company. And then, as abruptly as he'd invited me to the pub in the first place, he walked out and left me with half a pint of Guinness and the rest of the peanuts. I did what any sane person would do and started playing Angry Birds while picking at the open bag in front of me. When I finished my first pint, I ordered another. Sarah wasn't in when I got home, so I booted up my machine and sat down in front of it to work on my journal and to play with some code. Technically, I'm unemployed, at least that's what the taxman thinks, but I do some freelance work on the side as both a writer and a programmer. It's a good life if you love language. It doesn't matter to me whether I'm writing in English, French, or JavaScript. I'd been tucked away for a couple of hours, tapping away at the keyboard, when I felt a gentle rush of air as the front door opened and closed. There was a jingle of keys as Sarah threw them onto the coffee table, and she entered the study soon afterwards. She dropped a used copy of the Metro onto my desk. "How did it go?" she asked. I kissed her and she sat down on a beanbag beside me. "It went well," I said, "or at least, I think it did. There's a lot for me to think about. It sounds good, but there's got to be a catch. There always is. And I could do it. They need me more than I need them, and they know it." "Well," Sarah replied, "I'll love and support you no matter what you do." "You say that now, but have you really thought it through? This could change both of our lives, for better or for worse. It's kind of like betting everything on red and hoping that it pays off. What if it doesn't?" "I know," she said, "but sometimes you've got to take a chance. Maybe this is one of those times." "Maybe. I'll think about it." "You do that," she said, kissing me on the forehead and straightening my tie. "I will," I promised, "and I think I already know what to do. Now, get out of my office. This code won't debug itself." "Charming. I'll see myself out." To be honest, I was glad to see the back of her. It had been a long, long day. That was chapter 1 of Formerly, The Rise and Fall of a Social Network by myself, Dane Cobain, for this week's entry into the Rhylight Zone. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is John C. Buttigieg with Shimmer.
let's go.
Life can seem a vicious game, and you know love is just the same. Lay down your cards, give it a try. Can you see the girl with me? Well, she ain't my property, just don't come and ask me why. I'm tired of all their prying eyes, and I'm bored of all the lies and the gossip that I hear. I'll sage love songs just for you, lyrics you can misconstrue and hear what you want to hear. I gave you what I had inside, then watched you take me for a ride, though I tried to be sincere. I'm tired of your lying eyes, and I'm bored of all the sighs and the tears when you're near. But if you're ever feeling down, you know I'll always be around. I can't seem to stay away, so go. You must let go of my hand. You're not my woman, I'm not your man. There's a kindness being cruel. You'll go and try and play this cool. Ignore your heart, play by the rules, then it's me that feels the fool. I'm sick and tired of my disguise, so I'll just say my goodbyes and then slowly disappear. 'Cause I'm not really here, 'cause I'm not really here, I'm not really here.
That was some music by the Sepia Tone Folk Collective, and before that we had Shimmer by John C. Buttigieg. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and I'm joined here in conversation by the Sepia Tone Folk Collective. The first question is one I ask everybody. I don't know whether you'll have an answer for this or not. We'll find out. It is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think?
Do you want to answer?
I'll answer mine. I can't remember the title of it. The one that you read to me. Painted Veil. I haven't read all of it yet, though. Can I do that, or is that cheating?
Yeah, you can do that. That's fine. How is it so far?
Very good, I think.
Have you started the book I gave you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the latest one that I've been. Yeah, The Painted Veil.
Awesome. And who's it by?
Somerset Maugham.
Ah, cool. Someone I've heard of. I haven't always heard of them when I get people's answers to that one.
I'm reading a book called Fox Tossing, which is which I don't know if that makes good radio, but it's essentially a compilation of all of the forgotten sports of history.
Wow.
Which is really funny, but really eye-opening at the same time. There are some awful and some extremely funny sports listed there. And I don't know how some of them sort of died out. I think just because they were so dangerous. But yeah, fox tossing was a German sport in the medieval times.
Wow, there we go. What's the funniest sport that you've come across in there?
Just kind of, with all respect to cats, just kind of how Belgian people used to whirl cats around their heads.
Wow.
In some sort of, it's like a village fete thing. And then all the cats would obviously in the village would run away and hide, and part of the game would be running around the village, finding them to then whirl them around their head again.
Wow.
So being a cat in Belgium about 500 years ago was was not cool.
Yeah, it's like being a fox in Germany.
Like being a medieval German fox, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So obviously I want to ask you guys about the band today, and I wondered a good place to start would be where the name so Sepia Tone Folk Collective, where it comes from.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I've played in bands all my life, which have had silly names, really. As I don't know if you guys ever. I was playing in a band called the Naughty Book Club Band for quite a long time, and I just really like kind of funny, quite long, complicated but funny, amusing, standout titles of band names.
Yeah.
The music that we play in the Sepia Tone Folk Collective is it is a bit kind of old school. It's folk and blues and rock influenced by, you know, music from the 20s and the 30s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. So that's where the Sepia bit came from. And yeah, we're a folk collective. So there you go.
Awesome. Cool. And how long have you both, I mean, I suppose you've answered that for yourself, but how long have you both been performing, both sort of individually and together?
I've been on the stage since I was 2. It's a definite lifelong passion to perform, but singing was never really top of my list. In fact, I actively didn't seek out my West End ideals because I thought I couldn't sing. So yeah, it's a bit of a turnaround for me to be a lead singer in a band now.
It was a eureka moment.
It was.
Decided you can sing, and we were in the shower at the time.
Nice. Cool. And how long have you been playing together?
A year, almost exactly a year. I think it was in August, the end of August last year.
Got about a month. Yeah, so 11 months we've been playing together. Yeah.
Awesome.
I've just been playing music for years and years, just in bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. And I wanted to ask you about some of the venues you perform at. Do you have any particular like favorite venues to play at?
I think our go-to was the Garibaldi in Taplow, but unfortunately that one's not happening anymore. We love playing at the Stag and Huntsman in Hambledon, don't we?
Yeah, it's a really nice venue. Yeah, they often do kind of beer, cider, ale, hot dog, sausage, burger festivals.
And
it's always
they're
really
South
nice
African, so they do braise and really
and it's never been bad weather there. They always seem to bring South African weather as well and have just blazing hot sunshine. So awesome. Yeah, they're really good weekends. Yeah.
Cool. And obviously
jumping into any and every venue, like we just kind of go a bit on tour, don't we, sometimes?
Yeah. The more the merrier kind of thing.
Any venue that will have us.
Yeah.
Cool. And obviously I met you guys through like you performing at the Far Out sessions, and I wondered, how did you first get involved with Far Out sessions?
Yeah, how did we? That was through the Garibaldi, wasn't it?
Well, that's you, because you do all the social
media. So I think that they were doing a fundraiser at the Garibaldi, and obviously we were doing lots of open mics, and someone suggested that we went along, so we did, but we hadn't been asked to play, but we bought our stuff just in case, you know, as you do, and so we met Dane and Ali there and got talking, and I think they kind of liked our vibe, and then they kind of asked us to get up and play, so we were a little unrehearsed, to say the least, at that point, but yeah, that was the first kind of time they had heard us play, and I think that they from there went, okay, we want to see more of them.
We played a 9-minute cover of House of the Rising Sun, and
nice.
Dean was either really bored or really enthused because he joined in.
Yeah. He grabbed his guitar and was like, I know this one, let me play.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And so you've been sort of doing some promo work. You've got is it a new EP or is it an album that's coming out?
It's an EP. It's just 8 songs.
Cool.
But we're going to do another one in mid-August, maybe do another 7 or 8 songs as well, maybe put them together and make an album.
Awesome. Cool. And what's the title of that, and where can people sort of check that out? Do you not have a title?
Not yet. I don't think so, do we? Have you been thinking about this? He'll probably come out with something now and I'll be like, okay.
It's called How 2022 Will Set Me Free. It's another long, complicated title.
Yeah.
Which I like.
We had discussed one title, which was Ladies and Gentlemen, but I don't think that was going to stick.
I have no recollection of that conversation.
Cool. And where can people check out some of the songs from that?
Well, we're releasing snippets. Well, we finished releasing those snippets now on our social media. And yeah, we just kind of haven't decided exactly how to go about releasing them in full. I'm a teacher, so life's been a bit crazy, and I just needed a bit of time to research that, and I didn't want to rush it. So we have spoken to HMV about stocking the CD, so that looks like it might happen, but we wanted to wait again until the end of August. Once that second EP has been put together, and decide whether we wanted more songs than an EP or not.
Cool.
He's
and how
supportive of local talent, though, this guy, the HMV guy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he has. Yeah. Okay, cool. And how do you record? Like, what do you record? Just record at home?
No, we use Untapped Talent in Southampton, who is a friend of yours.
He's a friend of mine. I've known this guy for maybe sort of 15 years, back when I was down in Southampton living. And this is his whole thing. He when he finished uni, he's always wanted to go into music, and so he set up his own recording studio down by the docks, and it's really good. And he's been doing that, for the last 15 years. And so I always, every time I want to record something, I always go down to him. He seems to, because we know each other so well, he knows what kind of sound I want. He's really good at mixing it, and he's really good. He's a nice guy.
Awesome, cool. And so who would you say are some of your musical inspirations? Like, this is in general, not necessarily for the Sepia Tone Folk Collective. Who are some of the inspirations that both of you have when it comes to music?
Do you want to go first on this one?
Well, just I don't know. I grew up. I was lucky enough to. My parents were teenagers in the '60s, so I grew up listening to their music. When I grew up in the '80s, we used to go on long car journeys to go to the top of Scotland on holiday, or down to the West Country, and they'd be playing, all of the classic bands from the late '60s and early '70s. So I grew up listening to that, which I guess influenced me, because for a long time that's all I wanted to listen to. Then obviously growing up in the '90s, I listened to the rock and the Britpop in the '90s. I guess those are my musical influences.
Cool.
Late '60s, early '70s, and '90s rock.
I think I'm pretty similar as well. And Fleetwood Mac's a massive influence for me. I grew up listening to grunge and people like the Red Hot Chili Peppers are
the clear segue into folk is through grunge.
Absolutely. And my brother used to play in a band, and his mate's band, they were like big for a band around Bristol, where I grew up. And so we used to go through all the music venues there as well. So live music's always been kind of present in my teenage years and beyond. But I love folk artists, and I also like really strong female singers, Alanis Morissette and Kate Rusby, and just anyone that kind of has that strong vocals. It's not from my perspective, a strong female voice, I'm all for it.
I think if you look at the snippets on social media that we've released, visually a massive influence is the band as well, because it's all kind of sepia tone and black and white, and we try and make it look as rustic as possible, like much of the band's kind of like their photo sessions.
Awesome. You're listening to The Arch on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with the Sepia Tone Folk Collective, and here is some more of their music.
If you need me, just sing and shout, and I'll be there, just pick up the phone. Don't wanna think that you're on your own, so if you think that you need some company, don't be scared to come reach out to me. Don't hide away if you're feeling lonely, it's okay, oh baby, let me help you out. if you're feeling down, if you think that you need to give your mind a rest, have a chat and get things off your chest. Deep inside you know it's for the best and it's okay. Oh baby, let me take you out. Baby, let me make you smile. I can see it's been quite a while since you were free, so put on your shoes. We'll take a walk and talk about your blues, and I know about the pain that you've been through, the rage and disdain, I see it too. But please let me explain something to you. You'll be okay. Baby, let me make you smile. So tell me what you need from me. Tell me the guy you want me to be, and I'll be there, just say the word. I want to help, but I haven't heard. So if you think that you maybe want some space, or perhaps you need a friendly face to get your head back to your happy place, that's okay. Tell me what you need from me. If I cross the line, when we're together I forget the time. We're just the same like 2 in 1. They say time flies when you're having fun. Baby, you were lost and it was me who found you. And although this advice may astound you, just think about the people that you keep around you, and you'll be okay. Tell me if I cross the line.
That was some music by the Sepia Tone Folk Collective. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is our chat with the Sepia Tone Folk Collective. Cool. And how do you guys, like, because there's obviously just the two of you performing together, how do you like create a larger sound through things like percussion and through your harmonies and things like that? How do you approach that?
By him shouting at me that I'm no good.
By arguing. Yeah, when we started off, it was just an acoustic guitar, and Lucy was singing, and she had to learn a lot of the songs I'd written really, really quickly, which, you know, credit to her, she did. But then as we started writing more songs and getting a bit more adventurous, you know, Lucy started playing shakers and tambourines. I started writing vocal harmonies so I could be a backing singer. We've got a foot pedal so we can do, you know, bass and a hi-hat kind of thing. Looking into buying a looper pedal as well so we can put some lead guitar as well as the acoustic. And it's just kind of the more songs you write, the longer you play together, you evolve and the sound gets bigger and more exciting, I guess.
Awesome.
Richie's an amazing pianist as well, and so on some of the EP you can hear a little bit of piano, but obviously he's not Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins. He can't be a one-man band, so you know, I've had to step up and I've had to do a few things, but there's a couple of songs that we do sing on piano, but we don't do it very often because of transporting the keyboard and everything. So
cool. Awesome. And one of the questions I wanted to ask is, who are some of the other acts that you've kind of come across whose stuff you enjoy?
Is it too indulgent to say, well, there's this band called The Ilk. I really love it.
We get that surprisingly often on this show. So
yeah, that's good. I mean, I think that working with the Far Out production company in general, there are so many inspiring artists working with them. That's why we love being around them. They're proper musicians that really love what they do and, you know, practice and hone their skills, and that's really exciting. Certainly people like Nick Atkinson and Jazz Dillon and The Ilk, and you know, we really love that that group of people to be around. They're inspiring, and they keep bringing new people in. And there's some acts, because unfortunately we were playing a gig on their latest one on the 23rd, we couldn't go and see, but they've brought new people in again, so I'm a bit gutted that we haven't heard them. So they keep evolving, so we want to keep working with them so that we can keep playing with new acts.
I think a sincere answer to the question would be, the more kind of you go around and you go out on the circuit and play, even if it's kind of open mics, and you're not necessarily just playing gigs and festivals, you see some really, really, really decent musicians who go completely under the radar, but their sets blow you away. I mean, some of the people we've seen are just really, really decent, and I think that's really good. It's really exciting for the live music scene.
Yeah,
I think especially with something like an open mic, because you don't, like with like a festival, you see the lineup, so you know who's going to be there. Whereas with the open mic, you never know who's going to show up, and there's always, or it seems to me anyway, every time I go to an open mic, there's always at least one person who shows up that I've never met before, and they're normally great. Sometimes they're terrible, but even then, it's nice to see new faces, isn't it? So
yeah,
cool. So I want to talk a little bit about folk, and I wondered if you guys could try and define it. Like, how would you define folk music? What makes something folk?
Folk music is essentially just music for the people. That's what it all boils down to. It's I think often the lyrics were, folks got something to say. That's why it appeals to me, because I've always been interested in lyrics and poetry. So I think if a song has something interesting to say, that appeals to me, because I like writing as well. So I think folk probably evolved certainly in the early 60s into protest, through Dylan and Pete Seeger and all the folk artists of the early 60s, and then it became it merged with rock and became folk rock. And there were some really decent bands in the late 60s who kind of mixed it with blues as well. I'm really into, I didn't mention blues before, but I got really, really into the blues at times, and bought a resonator guitar without really knowing how to play it, and sort of learned, and just investigating loads of blues artists from the 20s and 30s and how they made a resurgence in the 60s, combining with folk and rock and stuff. It's just a really, really, really good scene. I think folk can get a reputation, if you don't know it too much, as being a bit namby-pamby, a bit weak, which is a shame, because I don't think it is. I think it has a lot to say, and I think the music genuinely stands up for itself as well. You have to be a decent guitar player to play folk music. So that would be my answer. What about you, Lucy?
I think what I like about it is the kind of the scope that it has, because it is music for the people. Certainly Richie writes songs that are protest songs. He's written songs that are really upbeat, and songs that are really meaningful and really thoughtful and really passionate. And I think that's really what I love about it, is that it kind of all comes under this one umbrella, but actually there's so much scope to it that it's really exciting.
It's a bit like rock in that respect, where like rock is a very generic term, and there's so many different types within that. I suppose that happens with a lot of genres these days, because I guess, like, especially with things like the internet, people can kind of branch out and find like niches within niches and stuff like that as well. Cool.
I think it probably gets pigeonholed now as being, some singer-songwriter with an acoustic guitar sitting in the forest glade singing about the birds and the bees and stuff. It's not that. I think that's a cliche.
And I was going to ask, like, what is it that you think that makes folk still relevant today? But I suppose you've kind of answered that, in that it's, like, I guess it's a reflection of people's lives, and it, especially with how you were saying it gives people a voice,
Yeah, it does. Folk will outlive us all. When all the other genres of music have died away and become unfashionable and gone full circle, folk will still be there, because people will always have something to say, and people always protest against the man, and people always write songs when they're unhappy or discontent.
And always have. It goes back so far, and I think at some point it's nice to recognise the traditional folk songs, and I think artists like Kate Rusby do that. They acknowledge the traditional and bring it into the modern day, which is nice as well.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your songwriting. How do you approach songwriting? Like, are you writing together now, or do you sort of go about separately?
No,
And the question that I always like asking is it music first, lyrics first, or a little bit of both?
It's a good question. Kind of assumed it was coming, that question, but never prepared for it. I think if I've written a couple of songs and they're a bit mellow, and I know they're a bit mellow and a bit kind of, this isn't going to be gig friendly, it's going to be hard to bring this one out. I'll actively sit down and think I should probably write a really upbeat song now.
Yeah.
So that answers the first part of the question. Usually it's tune first, because I'm always sitting there with a guitar on my lap and something will come.
Yeah.
But then if I'm out for a run, or or inverted commas cooking, or burning stuff down and melting stuff, more accurately, you'll think of a turn of phrase in your head and think that's quite a cool opening lyric for a song. Something that's going to stand out. That's a hook that's going to get people's attention. And so you just sort of I think you never sit down and write a song because you need to write a song or you want to. Songs just come. A good song will always come to you. You'll never sit down and just force a good song out.
I think one time you were just playing something. He often just tinkles around. Well, it was the guitar version of tinkling.
I tuned the guitar,
and I was like, "That's really pretty. Is that a new song?" And he was like, "I'm tuning the guitar."
It was an open tuning, and I tuned it back normally, and I've just played it kind of fiddling around, finger picking in D, and she said, "That's really nice. Have you written a new song?" And I hadn't, so I went home and wrote a song
based on the tuning.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And one of the questions I want to ask you, do you ever plan to bring more people into the band, or is it always going to be just you two?
Right. Maybe a professional tambourine player.
Oh!
Professional expert.
Shots fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I don't. I've got absolutely no plans to bring in anyone else into the band. I don't know about you.
No. I'm quite happy.
Maybe the next band member will be a looper pedal.
Yeah.
Awesome. I don't think it would enhance. As I think it might dilute us, perhaps. So I think from my perspective, just the two of us and all of our family of instruments, but no, nobody else.
Well, that makes it easier as well, because the more members you've got, the more of a pain it is to get everybody in the one place at the same time and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah, I'm pretty disorganized as it is, so just getting me in one place is
Awesome, cool. And the last question is technically two in one. So what's next for you, and where can people go to find out more?
Okay, well, what's next? We've got the EP, obviously, that we're recording late August. We've got loads of kind of gigs coming up, particularly at the Stag and Huntsman in September. I'm always trying to network and find out. I've got a couple of projects in the pipeline that could be quite big, but nothing confirmed, so I won't say anything more than that. We've also just done a little video, haven't we, which we are waiting for the edit for, and we obviously just did a recent photo shoot, and all of those things are on our Instagram and Facebook page.
I think the next big thing is the 20th of August, doing the second half of an EP stroke album, and then possibly putting it on a CD and getting it sold in HMV. And just doing the circuit, doing as many open mic nights and getting ourselves out there as we can.
Cool.
Breaking strings, tuning up, and writing songs.
I mean, awesome. I think it's quite cool how far we've come in less than a year. So who knows what next year will hold.
Yeah, for sure. Big thank you to the Sepia Tone Folk Collective for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is some more music.
exactly what's upon the brain. I used to leave my mark on walls just to find my way again. Don't leave me by the wayside, captured by the firelight, so I can look away. I never saw it in your eyes, the love that fades away like you search for better days. Simple things and now simple loves don't belong here anyway. I'll think I'll keep it basic though, as they rain on my parade. Don't leave it by the wayside, captured by the firelight, so I can look away. I never saw you in your eyes, the love that fades away like you search for better days. Simple words, now they need simple hearts, just a whisper and they break. I'll think I'll keep myself apart, and my heart out of harm's way. Don't leave me by the wayside, captured by the firelight, so I can look away. I never saw it in your eyes, the love that fades away like you search for better days.
That was Simple Wayside by Kit Goff. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilkshed for this week's album review, courtesy of Twangling Jack Ford.
Roxy Music, their self-titled first album. Hearing exciting new music in the early 70s was almost a way of life, but I still remember listening to sounds of the 70s late one night and hearing the first broadcast of a song by Roxy Music. Strange sounds as if being sent from another galaxy, a yodely vocal intro, a catchy verse and then a mad change of tempo, with what was to become their trademark soprano sax mangled by synthesizers, and some phased drums. Then came another verse sounding a bit Spanish with castanets, then a fast mad wailing guitar solo, a harmony jazz riff, crashing power chords, bubbling moog and a chaotic fade. The song was called Ladytron. The name pretty much said it all. That set the template for the first album and the remarkable standalone single Virginia Plain, which is on the CD. The single and album became big sellers, though even listening to them today there is something totally odd about them. A mismatch of styles like Pink Floyd meets T-Rex. Clever musicians dressed like an over-the-top glam act. The album ends with a hint of Noel Coward and more castanets. A bit like a dog I used to have, that always had one ear up and one ear down. The wrongness made it more lovable. It was the mad genius of Brian Eno that managed to make such disparate sounds work so well together. But he only did one more album with them, the equally entertaining For Your Pleasure, before he went on to be a major force in music production, working with Bowie and Talking Heads, and leading the field in ambient music. Roxy Music without him became much more middle of the road, making music of their time, whereas this album still sounds odd and exciting and not of any time. Roxy Music, the self-titled first album.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to the Sepia Toned Folk Collective. Thank you to A.B. Frank for his foray into the Rhylight Zone. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can drop me an email here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. And I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anybody in the art scene, anybody with MP3s to share, stories to share. Do get in touch. You can also find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen again. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcast. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is Humans Can't Reboot with Emotional Warning. I'll chat to you next week.